is all right, no matter where you come from.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Literary Hour. We are happy you're here to join us again and to listen to us talk about national symbols and nationalism. We're going to have a very interesting discussion today, and joining me on this discussion will be my co-host, Professor K. Moses Nangwe. Hi, Prof.
Hey Jackie, how you doing?
I'm
Another
okay. How are you?
fine.
How's everything? We missed you last week.
Yes, I know. Technology sometimes gets in the way,
Yeah.
but I'm glad to
So
be here.
we're glad to have you because I was floundering yet last week, but
I
you're here,
know
so all is well.
you are strong. You are strong.
So today, Prof, you and I decided to talk about national symbols and nationalism and things that unite us and things that have the tendency to divide us, I guess. Um, and I want to talk about the national symbols because it seems as if national symbols unite us, but it also divides us, you know, and the propensity for division, I guess, is what I want to focus on. But as we start, I was reading a paper by David Butts, and he said that national symbols are conceptual representations of group membership.
Mm.
So, do you agree with that statement?
Well, it one has to look at it from a number of angles, especially when we talk about group what?
Group membership.
Group membership. Yeah. Uh, One has to also apply an historical context to what constitute this group we are talking about and how each um, sector of the group or each part of the group uh, kind of accepts or looks at the what brings it into that thing we call a group. So we have to then put a lot of things into the historical context I'm talking about. I know it gets to a point where sometimes our look at a lot of these things will come from individual perspective and all that. But we have to make sure in dissecting this thing called the group or this concept called the group, we have to understand it thoroughly before we can move on. Otherwise, we can get into a quagmire of divisiveness as opposed to inclusivity.
I definitely agree with you because it seems as if the symbols that are set there to unite, they must mean something to people within that group.
Yeah,
You know, they're almost like um, it's almost like a narrative of their life.
yeah.
You know how we always say that the constitution of a country
Hmm.
is the autobiography of each person and of the country itself.
Yeah,
So that when you're reading the constitution, you're able to say, oh, that's me.
yeah.
I see myself. So it is with national symbols, is but it seems as if we move to Liberia, because we are talking about Liberian literary and literature and history. When we move to Liberia, I think that the reason why national symbols are a source of division, they are a source of unity, but they are also a source of division, is because all the members that make up that group, they do not claim membership within that group. You know, they're in the group, but there's no belonging per se. I think that is why our symbols are such divisive symbols.
Mm. Well, I think we have to a kind of bring a particular understanding to these symbols, as I said, within the context of our history, our history. I When someone says it's unique, is like stating the obvious. But our history really is in its own category. The making of the history, as we've seen over the past several weeks, we've looked at various aspects, will suggest that when we talk about Liberian history, it doesn't follow this one trajectory. It doesn't follow that one path that several other uh, several other countries on the continent have followed. It has had a strong um, Western component. It has had a strong, even though not so strong, African component as far as putting the nation state together. And if we look at that aspect, which has to do with putting the nation state called Liberia together, we are going to find out this context of, well, this part believes it belongs and this part does not believe it belongs. It is those who are the thinkers. It is those who are the painters. It is those who are the writers who have to make sure that we bring a kind of understandable configuration of this particular nation state called Liberia. It is those who have to discuss it and be able to determine the kind of um, what you see as a slight balancing, because if we want a total balancing, it will create a confusion that neither will so easily win.
So, yes, I agree with you that like Liberia has a unique history, but there are many countries that have unique histories. You
Yeah.
know, and it's true. Being settled. It's almost like if you look at Liberia,
Mhm.
with the coming of the freed people, it is almost like, and don't get me wrong, it is just my reading, but
Yes.
it is almost like an American diaspora,
Mhm.
coming to Liberia. It may be that people say, oh, they are returning home. But it is almost like, because if you look at, like we said, most of the letters, the people feel like, okay, you're sending me from America, which is my land of nativity. So it is almost like this American diaspora, because the people that left were not the people that were coming, right? So the people that were coming were different. But let's look at the national symbols in Liberia. Let's bring it home.
Mm.
Okay, so the national symbols, they condense, right, the knowledge of history and memories and value system and mores. So when you look at this, for example, the national symbol, let's look at the flag, since we just had Flag Day. So when you look at the flag, to somebody else, it's just a piece of cloth
Mhm.
with different colors,
Mhm.
I mean strips of color. But to a Liberian,
Mhm.
there's this visceral, emotive
Mhm.
angst, like this is my flag. So it is almost like this affinity, this love. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who hate, but we're talking about this, the emotions that come up just because you are a Liberian, and this symbolizes, the flag symbolizes the value system, the ideology of the country. So if we look at the flag, Prof, and you and I spoke, and I wrote that about the first one that was written, right? And the first one, I don't know if you saw it on the, I had posted it on Flag Day, and the American Colonization Society, right, in on April 9th, 1827. This is what they said, Prof. I quote, as a flag is requested for our colony at Liberia, and as it is proper to make the flag as nearly like the flag of the United States, being dependent thereon, yet sufficiently distinct to designate it as the flag of the African colony, resolved that the flag of the United States be adopted, omitting the stars and substituting therefore a white cross in the center of the azure field. End of quote. So that was the first Liberian flag. That we were a colony, and we had to therefore wear the colors of the colony, and so it was the American flag that was resolved that we be the American flag. So when you see that, and we talk about the fact that national symbols bring unity, what comes to mind because of that?
Okay, let's backtrace a little. We're talking about all countries are unique. Huh?
Yes.
All countries are unique. And perhaps a study has to be done in terms of the evolution of each of these African states we are talking about.
Yes.
To a large extent, many of the states we are talking about today were a kind of organized, as opposed to having petty kingdoms, each in its own cultural nation, or each in its cultural configuration. In the case of Liberia, that actually existed, which is that, for instance, Vi had its own cultural nation, Kru had its cultural nation, Grebo had its own cultural nation, and what have you, operating in an enclave, in a sense. And then you had this group coming over, even though black in color, but had its own thought processes of a nation that was expected to a kind of bring a few individuals together, few in I mean, I'm using few not as 1, 2, 3, but a kind of small cluster. That's what I'm looking at. Now, this group came, and through them, what was alien to the cultural nations, this group brought it in, which was the nation state, having the capacity or having the dream of pulling together numerous cultural states together to make one, to create a diversity. Now, that was unique in itself, and that is why I said we have to go back to the word unique. In the case of the other states, in the case of the other African nations, that was a little different. That was a little different because almost immediately the group that came colonized. And so when they tried to colonize them, they fought back in terms of wanting to stay apart from that group, like you talk about colonialism that went on in Ghana, that went on in Nigeria, that went on in other places. Now, in that process, you will say that Liberia's case was not that we are talking about today, which is the white coming to colonize a place called Liberia, or colonize a place called a different African group, as opposed to what you find in those other countries like Ghana, Nigeria, what have you, where white people almost immediately coming forth to dominate them and colonize them. So in that process, you had these people fighting back politically, and in our case, it was more of economically fighting back in a place like Liberia.
Prof, it's true that the people who colonized Ghana, Sierra Leone, whatever, were foreign and white. Liberia was just as colonized, although it was black people. They were this thing about the first independent republic really is true, but we have more the colonial mindset than countries that were colonized. Liberia was a colonial state. I mean, look at the name, American Colonization Society for the Removal of Black People. You have these people writing letters back home to their friends saying, we don't want to be here, America is our home. The only difference between the colonial masters was the color of the skin. Liberia was a colonial country. And when you come to fighting back, yes, the people fought back, but so did the Gribbles. They fought, you know, they fought. So I mean, so I think we're deviating a little bit from the topic.
No, we are not, because what we are doing here, first of all, we are trying to establish the word unique.
Yeah.
All right. And we are talking about the forces and voices that came in as a way of dominating whatever lifestyle was in this region called, that will later become Liberia.
Yes.
So how they put their own thing in the context is far different from what happened in the other areas. That's what I was saying. Almost immediately, it was in those other countries, almost immediately, it was the white as dominating force. But in our case, it was more of a slight sense of ideology that came, which had to do with Western ideas as far as what? As far as the running of a country is concerned, as far as a nation state is concerned. That is what I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's come to this symbol now, the flag, right?
Okay.
So we have the flag adopted August 24th, 1847, right? There were 7 women who were tasked with creating a flag, right? And I want to read the names of the women and where they were from. Susanna Lewis and Sarah Draper came from Philadelphia. Mary Hunter from South Carolina. Rachel Johnson, Matilda Newport, and Mrs. J.B. Rusron, they came from Baltimore, Maryland. And Colonette Teague Ellis was from Virginia, right? These were the people tasked with making the flag. And then I want to read from the colonial report, from the repository, when they say on the 24th, the celebration of the 24th institution is at present the all-absorbing topic. So everybody was talking about it. So we have seen more than one list going about. So it seemed as if everybody was talking about Flag Day. So the dawn of this day was announced to the inhabitants by the thundering of a cannon from Central Fort. This is the celebration now. At sunrise, the staff intended to bear the testimony of female patriotism and ardor in the cause of Liberia's independence, right? Okay, and then it says at 9:00 a.m., the governor with the commissioned and non-commissioned soldiers of the 1st Regiment assembled at the courthouse. At 11, the companies escorting the governor and other officers marched up and formed a line in front of the government house. And soon afterwards, a message was sent to the ladies that His Excellency was ready to receive them. And so the committee appointed by the ladies to represent them on the occasion consisted of, and then the same people, Susanna Lewis and Hunter, they descended bearing the flag and advanced towards the governor, who met them a few paces in front of the troops. As soon as the ladies appeared, issuing from the door, the line presented arms. Mistress Lewis presented the flag, accompanied by a neat patriotic speech. At the conclusion of the speech, 3 cheers went up from the troops and the assembled multitude. The governor received the flag with his accustomed gallantry, unfolded it and handed it to the standard bearer. Right? And then it goes on. The flag is made of silk. On one side, in the blue fee, it bears the motto of the Republic in large letters. Thus, over the star, the love of liberty, under it brought us here.
Okay.
On the other side is the Republic of Liberia. The staff is of rosewood with a gilt head. Okay, so the flag was then detached from the spear and bent at 12, the first gun salute. Okay, so this is the festivities that went on.
Pageantry that went on. Yes, that's right.
Yes,
Okay.
for the flag. So they handed the flag August 24th. It was Flag Day. It was made of silk. And one thing we just found out was that on one side was the Love of Liberty brought us here, was on the flag. It used to be on the flag with the Republic of Liberia.
Yeah.
Right? But then it was removed. And then we have what we have today. One star on a blue field.
Yeah.
Prof, do you know what everything means on the flag?
Of course.
Can you tell us so people who don't know can know what it means?
First the colors of white, blue, and red.
Yes.
And if we look at those, quite frankly, all people within the Republic can respond to them.
Yes.
The white has to do with purity. The blue has to do with a representation of darkness, okay, which is something you talk about, the color of the sky, okay, and the blue has to do with the lone republic.
Yes, the dark, yeah.
Yeah, this is
the dark continent.
The then dark continent of Africa, what have you? We can talk about that. So you have that. The star has to do with the lone republic, as we said, okay, and the red has to do with bravery, valor.
Yes.
The white has to do with purity. Okay, so my question is, what detaches from anyone wanting to see himself or herself, or every group seeing itself in those colors, except, of course, if we want to a kind of appropriate certain things to ourselves and nobody else, then we can get into the bickering of, oh, you know, I am not the red in there. Oh, you know, I'm not the blue in there. Oh, you know, I'm not the white in there. So that is why, in fact, that is why I started with my comment by saying that unless we decide at some point to make it divisive, we can create cubicles of interpretation. We, the learned group in the country, we the thinkers, we the writers, we the painters, we the historians, and all those, we must be able to kind of lead the context of understanding really what those colors mean to the entire nation, as opposed to saying, well, you know, we see words in that document which say that we, meaning the group that came from America, we, that group, wanting to be a little close to America from where we came, we are the ones who are suggesting this particular line of configuration or what have you. Again, it is one of those things that will have a kind of longevity in terms of the discussion of what those colors mean.
Well, I agree with you that the colors mean something, whether indigenous or settler, it means something. The making of the flag itself, right? You're listening to the names and where they came from.
Yes.
Right? That in itself is exclusionary. The act of making the flag is exclusionary.
Okay.
Now let's look at that and say, okay, we have a unique history of people coming. We said the one commonality is migration, but it's also something that stands apart, right? Okay. So let's look at the flag, and and I want to juxtapose it with something else.
Yes, why not?
We look at the flag and we say it's a symbol of Liberia. It's a symbol of unity. It's a symbol of people ideals, their hopes, their dreams, right? Let's look at it. And I don't want people jumping to conclusion like, oh, she's talking about Ghana. I am using an instance. Let's look at the golden stool for Ghana.
Yeah.
Right? There's legend says the stool dropped from heaven, dropped from the sky. And it landed, or it fell by the first Asante Hine, Osetutu. Right? And the golden stool, from my history, I know that it symbolizes the soul of the Ashanti people.
Yeah.
People who are born, people who are dead, and people yet to be born.
Yes.
So this stool, which is the purest form of democracy I know, is that the Asante Hine doesn't sit on the stool. The stool walks before them, because it symbolizes them.
It's like a tabernacle.
Yes, like a tabernacle. Yeah. So when the British, in their wisdom, and I use that word satirically, in their wisdom, decided that they wanted to take this tool to their Queen Victoria or whoever. Asante, why the people went to war, right? Because this was their soul. Right? Okay, my question then comes. This flag, do you see it as the soul of Liberia? Do you see it as representative of the people? Now, when I say that, the question I'm asking is, I mean, at that time, let's say at that time, we're not talking about now. Now everybody say, oh yeah, that's our flag. I'm talking about then. When they were marching, when they were handing it to His Excellency, when they were shooting the cannon. Do you think that at that time, the indigenous people saw that flag and said, oh yes, that represents us?
If they even saw it.
Yeah, if they even saw it. But I'm sure they did, because it flew. It flew.
Yeah, Lone Star tells us that. The Lone Star forever tells us that.
Yes.
Okay, the thing about it is that at that point, we will say that it was one of sowing the seed of exclusion. Remember, I said as well that before we had the 1800s, we did not have a nation state. We did not have a nation state. The flag and the declaring of independence happened to have been the coming of the nation state. It took a while, first in the early part of the 1900s, and then in the middle of the 1900s, when the indigenous people had, well, a basic right to vote. They were not part of what we call Liberia today. We said something to the effect that in the early 1900s, this whole idea of naturalization, as repugnant as it may be today, was there. So we have to follow that national trail. We have to follow that national trail. I know it doesn't sit well with people today, especially from one wave of the population, the indigenous wave of the population. We also have to respect history, or at least to acknowledge history of the evolution of this place called Liberia. It took a while before the other groups, we talked about the various ethnic groups. It took a while for those ethnic groups to come in. So what we have to do now is to be able to kind of fashion an understanding that is not repugnant, that is not sowing the seeds of divisiveness. Unless we get into that mode of thinking, this whole story of, well, the red is there, but it didn't represent us. Well, the white was there, but it doesn't. Where the blue was there, but it doesn't represent us. When we begin to have such mindset, as opposed to finding the real values that are supposed to keep us going, then there is going to be a problem. I know, as I said earlier, I know what I'm saying. It's kind of contentious in other corners, but I am saying that we've got to follow the trail of history.
Okay, so moving on from the flag,
Yeah.
let's take another symbol, which is the seal, the coat of arms.
The coat of arms.
The coat of arms. Okay. I mean, we don't have a PowerPoint, so we can't show, but everybody knows the seal of Liberia.
Well, still,
right?
we have to play in context so that people follow that up.
Yeah,
The coat of
yeah.
arms.
So, huh?
I said the coat of arms. You said,
The
as
coat
you
of
said,
arms.
yeah, coat of,
Yeah.
okay.
So Samuel Benedict, right, from the Liberian Herald. So this is what he said. The following flag and seal were adopted by the convention, right?
Yes.
As the insignia of the Republic of Liberia and ordered to be employed to mark its nationality, right?
Okay.
So the flag, 6 red stripes with 5 white stripes alternately displayed longitudinally in the upper angle of the flag next to the spear, a square blue ground covering in depth 5 stripes. In the center of the blue, 1 white star. Now, the seal, a dove on the wing with an open scroll in its claws. A view of the ocean with a ship under sail. The sun just emerging from the waters. A palm tree and at its base a plow and a spade. Beneath the emblems, the word Republic of Liberia. And above the emblem, the national motto, the love of liberty brought us here.
Yeah.
The former seal of the Commonwealth is ordered to be used until that for the Republic shall be engraved.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so that was January during the convention. So now we come to that. How inclusive is that one?
Okay. When I'm looking at the seal, the coat of arms, I start from the base. I'm not talking about the arcing letters first, both above and beneath.
Okay.
I see a patch of green field.
Yes, the earth, yeah.
I see a patch of, I see the plow. I see the spade. I see the palm tree.
Yep.
I've left land now and I'm going on to sea. I'm going to look at the sea, the coast. All right. I see the sail ship.
The alligator. That's the first ship that brought the settlers.
Yes.
In 1820, the alligator.
You can add the name there, what have you? But I'm seeing, I see the sail ship.
Yes.
Okay. On the right, I see the rising sun.
Yes.
Even though sometimes I see it as a sun that is going to sleep. All right, the setting sun. I see the dove.
Yes.
And I see the scroll.
Where do you see the scroll?
Oh, I see the dove is holding the scroll, right, between its beak, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, because he said within his claws.
Claws. Okay, all right. There's a little shape there. What have you? But of course, let us even see the scroll as being held by the claws. Now, let anyone tell me that we are not a kind of brought together in that coat of arms.
Okay, so in the coat of arms, the earth, the spade, the palm tree, all of those things represent some sort of indigeneity.
Yes.
Right?
We are talking about the importance of labor. We are talking about the importance of labor. One of the things I normally think about when we talk about the flag and the coat of arms is the whole idea of a story.
Yes.
You get a story or you get a novel, which is actually about the same, except that in terms of length and other kind of a thing. Anyone who goes to the story and leaves that story has something to reflect on. And on the basis of creativity, so many things can come from that one story. In our Liberian case, sometimes as difficult it is for people to, as difficult sometimes, and even as painful as the interpretation may be, we have to ask ourselves the question, around what and towards what does a nation go? Does the nation go? We are interested in creating a whole, collaboration, cooperation, and all those things. Do we find some of these things? Because we can never find all of them. We can never find all of them in that word set of symbols. So when it comes to, after we look at the objects, when it comes to the lettering, that's where, for instance, I know some time ago, you asked a question and I said, well, nothing should be changed. Or it depends on what should be changed and what have you. And I'm saying we can do a twigging of the love of liberty brought us here. But even in the essence of it, we can find out that virtually it is liberty that brought all of us from whether Nile or Nile River or what have you. But we were interested in freedom. We were interested in being at peace with ourselves as opposed to what was happening when the kingdoms or the empires were being demolished or were falling apart. But if we look at, if we want to be technical about it, we can say, of course, that to say that the love of liberty brought us here, since it links to a transatlantic slavery past, we may need to talk about justice in it, we may need to talk about peace, we may need to talk about unity. So we can, is it South Africa where they have, I think, is it four?
Two national anthems.
No, four. I'm talking about things that tend to explain the soul of that country. We talk about four. There are four. I think four words. Well, in talking about Liberia now, I will talk about justice instead of saying the love of liberty brought us here. We will take out that liberty and make it one of the words. We will take out unity, make it one of the words. We will take out justice and maybe a fourth one. So we have that as those words that will kind of surround the objects in the coat of arms.
Yeah, I see many coat of arms for countries is like loyalty, honor, courage, things like that. Yeah. Yes. So you're saying that instead of making a sentence, you can take the words and put it there. But you're right in that, because we did discuss and said that the commonality of what brought is everything that we came together. The migration was because of love of liberty, where we have four different groups, whether you were indigenous, whether you were settler, whether you were recaptured African, or where the West Indies, they came because they were kind of like come to Liberia, because they were more educated and they were giving 25 acres per family. So they came. But I agree with you. Now, when we talk about the symbols that hold us together, it seems as if during times of crisis, the symbols become even more, I wouldn't say beloved, but even more inspiration.
Yes,
it's like I mean, I don't like to always bring up America thing, but remember during the Vietnam War and they're hoisting that flag, it has become an iconic picture of them hoisting that flag. So now, if we say that the symbols, right, the symbols of a country can inspire nationalism. The symbols of a country can bring people together. We know that it can divide, but think of the symbols almost as when we discuss naming. We said naming empowers you. So think of the flag as almost as a name of a country, the coat of arms as the badge, right? And so these things, I was reading that in Japan they mandated that they display the flag in all classrooms and people pledge allegiance to that flag. Even the teacher stands up. I'm sure it's the same thing in Liberia. But what I'm saying is that how now if we look at these symbols, and we say that these symbols are there to unify us, it may be that in the making of these symbols, these national symbols, in the making, there were some groups that were excluded, but even those groups that were excluded can find something within these symbols that will bring them into the fold, per se. Let me see, into this fold. Before we continue discussing, we'll take some questions, but we forgot to say happy birthday to Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia is 4 years today. I want to say happy birthday. You've done well. You've elevated the discussion about all things Liberia and Liberian. So thank you for allowing us this platform, and happy birthday to you, Dennis and Anthony and all the team. We have done well. You have done well. So thank you. So let's look at some comments, and then we can continue our discussion.
Okay.
So okay, Patience says she's watching from Lakeville, Maryland. No, Minnesota. Hello, Patience. Jimmy Eastman, as always, watching from Washington, D.C. Hi, Jimmy. Romeo Kano, I'm following you from my residence on the Capitol building. Oh, hello, Romeo. Tell all the people hello. Basiki Kone said Liberia was indeed a colonial enterprise. While other colonized people were seeking to reaffirm their African identity, we were busy affirming our stepchild status with America. Okay. Jimmy Eastman says it wasn't the same form of colonization because the mother nation did not set up the colonial structures as in other countries. The support was not there. The establishment of the mother nation's government and property that was not enforced. It was merely an organization that set it up, and you could use the mother nation's flag and authority. Well, I don't know about that, but we can discuss that. He said could not use the mother nation authority. Okay, it's not. Africa great. Okay, for I guess this guy is there was no inclusion at that point in time. Nehemiah says there was no inclusion. And Humphrey Jabate said, good lessons from the presenter. This is welcoming. Thank you, Humphrey. Christopher Togbasi said, our flag lacks inclusion. Our American Liberian flag lacks the sense of identity, values, belief, dignity, and pride in history. What does our nation's flag stand for? Folks, however, the legislature of Liberia authorized the president to appoint a 47 members commission and or scholars to study and change the flag and other national symbols. Think about the sense of identity, real identity, values, beliefs, dignity, and pride through history. Thank you. Okay. Christopher is the okay. He did that. We did that already. The flag of the American Liberian people, the flag of the American Colonization Society, the flag of the Republic of Liberia, our flag lacks inclusion. Okay, so I think we did that already. Larry Davis and Jimmy Eastman, you are correct, sir. Liberia is exceptional among African nations. Liberians wrote the draft charter for OAU. Liberia led the way for establishing the African Development Bank, the Mana River Union, and ECOWAS. Liberia maintained its autonomy during the Berlin Conference. Okay, that was 1884. The Berlin Conference maintained its independence because it was independent. 1884, 1847, it was an independent country. Yeah, so I don't think that it was in any danger of being taken over. Nehemiah said, how did the delegates come about at the convention and from where? Okay, so Sarah, we did that before about the convention. We talked about it. They were all from the they were all settlers, and then the 7 ladies who made the flags, we had discussed that. They were from Philadelphia, the Carolinas, and Virginia, and Maryland in the United States. So we discussed that at the beginning, but the convention was for the settler. So Elisha said education at its worth, and Hamilton Zili said you are absolutely right. I think he agreed with me.
Well, no, Larry, but what is this person right about, Shaki? You say something like I think you are absolutely right about what?
Okay, so Larry Davis is saying to Vasiki Kone that descendants of formerly enslaved African Americans used their diplomatic skills to ensure Liberia was not colonized like the rest of Africa. Ethiopia also maintained its independence
until he
um,
fought with Italy, and of course,
Ger- um, but
no,
I don't.
yeah, go ahead.
No, but the Ethiopians beat the Italians, I guess. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I don't understand. They use their diplomatic skills well to ensure Liberia was not colonized like the rest of Africa. I think you're right, Liberia, because remember, Prof, we discussed about France
Yeah.
when and Great Britain when they were chipping away at our territory, and we were complaining, and nobody seemed to want to listen.
Yeah.
And then Germany stole our Galinas Islands. Give
Yes.
it back to us. Give it back to us. It's ours. You know, the Galinas Islands, for those of you who are just coming, Prof, if we can just do a little history,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yes.
The Galinas Island was bought
Uh-huh.
by, I think, Joseph Jinky Roberts, right, Prof?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes. He felt that the Galinas Islands was the one that was the jumping off point.
Uh-huh.
That's where the slaves went, and then they were sent. So Joseph Jinky Roberts decided that, you know what, if we purchase this as Liberians, we will stop the slave trade. We will hamper it.
Yes.
So we bought the Galinas Island only for France. I mean for Great Britain to take it away from us.
Yeah. The whole
And then,
idea of power politics came into the picture, and they even though payments had been made and all that,
yes,
they kind of got through power gymnastics and took it away from Liberia for us.
did we get our money back?
I beg you. Just
We need, that's reparations. We should get our money back. So Christopher Tobasi, he says the settlers, they built nothing but a hegemony. Edward Doe, opinion columnist. They were nothing but land grabbers who built nothing but a hegemony to oppress the natives and keep themselves in power for more than 100+ years.
Yes.
Some say the native boys killed 40 innocent men who were put on a pole and shot during the coup which brought Samuel Doe to power. I say to them, how do they reconcile the 20 Grand Crew chiefs that were executed in broad daylight? Okay.
Even more than 20 chiefs. But you see, Chris, if I should call you that now, do we understand?
Yeah, we know that.
Okay.
Oh, he said, do we understand? Yeah. Christopher, we discussed naming and how naming empowers, and we even talk about things like Victoria Falls, Macedonia is called now, and things like that. So you're right. I guess the question is, what he's saying is that how would Liberians come to this table to discuss changing names? They have to first understand what changing the name would entail and what it would bring for the country. Humphrey says there is a need to rename some of our cities. We can't have majority of our major cities with Western name. Where is our cultural identity then if we don't make these changes? See, okay. Prof, Humphrey agrees with me.
No, Jackie, you cannot continue to say that. I know I'm being diplomatic about it, but the thing about it, let's get to what he says, especially when he says some. I agree.
Yes, some.
In fact, he is. I would think he is one of the few critical thinking minds to bring in the whole question of what qualifiers. Because if you want to change all names, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said at some point in time that black supremacy is as dangerous as what? As white supremacy. White supremacy is as dangerous as what? Black supremacy. If the changing of names must come into the picture, if the changing of symbols must come into the picture, we've got to understand, again, going back to what I said about following the historical trail of Liberia. Following the historical trail of Liberia. In a place where for a good number of years, white people dominated African indigenous people, that is, it would be inconceivable to say that we are just flipping the whole thing around without the knowledge of history. In our case in Liberia, you had people, black people with Western thought and Western ideology coming into this place and almost immediately setting up an institution, which, even though with its own flaws, was able to be guided to some point as we have it today. So what the kind of struggle that continued in Liberia for a good while was more of an economic struggle. It was more of an economic struggle, and the pain from that it kind of generated what happened at the University of Liberia, what happened in other regions of this country called Liberia. We can look at those, and then based upon that, look at certain names that are an eyesore. And if it gets to the point of being an eyesore, and once, as you, Jackie, suggested another time, which I accepted, which was, hey, we need a conversation. We can have conversation about these things here and then come up with a definite position that will have a fair balance. A fair balance, is probably what we can take.
Okay,
we cannot have a total balance. A total balance is just going to throw things maybe out of whack because of those who may not understand what is going on. Yes.
Every time you and I discuss this, we talk about the underneath of things. Yeah. That there's a surface and then there's an underneath of things. So somebody suggested, oh, let's get 47 people around a table to discuss. Before we can even begin that frank discussion, as Dr. Elwood Dunn said, frank discussion, we come back to the underneath of things, right? The first one, and I maintain, is Monrovia. But no. How do you say it? Let me learn.
No, I'm smiling. Okay.
So we have a country, and again, I will come back to it. We have a country, Liberia.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Land of the free. Liber means free. And then we have a capital city, Monrovia, named after the largest slave owner.
No, it wasn't the largest. Don't say, Jackie, don't.
Okay. He was a slave owner.
He was one of the few.
I'm still talking. Let me finish. Let me land. Not only that, we have this guy, James Monroe, who never freed a single slave. Now listen, Prof. You can say, okay, the people are going to Liberia. We see a lot of slave owners sending people. Let me free my slaves. This guy, the only person he freed was Peter Marks. And he freed that man after his death, after Monroe died. In his will, he said, oh, Peter Marks should be free. None of the other people. Now, I after our discussion, I follow up, right? I went and I read more about James Monroe.
Yeah.
James Monroe settled in Virginia, and so William and Mary, the University of William and Mary, they have his statue and things, and they just had a discussion whether to bring his statue down, whether to change some of the things that were named after him. And some of the slaves that he owned, their descendants came to this discussion, right? And said, you know what? Let's keep the name. And so it was a decision that they made. So when we come now to Liberia, we say discussion is not only the key, understanding. So the thing I would say to you, Prof, is that if you ask people now, should we change the flag? I bet you so many people will say no. And the reason I would say is because, oh, it looks like America flag, but then we come to the crux of the matter. When you say, we discussed that the other day, when you say, oh, the people, they were civilized and so, what does civilization mean? What does it mean? Because when you start looking at those concepts, oh, this man is civilized, this man is not civilized because of the Western or the formalized definition of civilized, then you come to another discussion. So I think if we are to change these symbols, right? And you're right. I think that the coat of arms, the seal, I think just taking liberty, love, liberty, and maybe justice or peace, giving our history peace, is fine. But when we come to the flag, Prof, looking at the construction, looking at what we just discussed, the women came, they brought the flag to the governor took the flag, it was made of silk, the flag and this, and these women were from the United States colonies, all of those things. I think, Prof, we need the discussion, we should have it, but we should have a new flag. And as a symbol, I would say to you, Prof, as a symbol of Liberia, it's true. When you're going through the war or you're going through traumatic events, you tend to hold on to the symbols that you belong. But this flag, I think that you say is inclusive. I think it is more divisive than inclusive. And that is what I'm saying, that if national symbols like the golden stool of the Ashanti kingdom, if those things held the people together, that the people were willing to go to war because of that, we need something that will bring us together, and the flag is not it. And let's see what Larry David, what Larry David said. Larry David says Liberia is the most unique nation on the African continent. If the settlers didn't come to Africa, all of Africa would have been colonized except Ethiopia. As I stated before, Liberians wrote the draft charter for the OAU charter. Liberians and the rest of Africa should be thanking President Obama for leading the way to African unity. Well, that's how you feel.
Okay.
Not everybody feels that way.
Okay.
And then Chavez Bestman said, what do you think is essence of changing? Okay. Changing means to discuss. And that's what I said, you can discuss and we can decide, you know what, after this discussion, we have come to the realization that we want to keep our flag. That's fine. We keep our flag. We keep our national symbol, and it becomes perhaps more inclusive because now we all have a say in keeping this flag. But before, we never had a say. The indigenous people never had a say. So I'm saying we need to come together now as a people and discuss this.
Okay. I get the point you are making, Jackie. The thing about change, especially talking about national symbols and what have you, changes without the core parts of individual and collective value system will mean nothing. And again, that's what needs to be at the center of it all. If we change symbols, and these symbols that are brought in are simply to express that, yes, we were the people who helped utter the structure of the symbols and what have you. So I'm saying, in addition to talking about the change of names and what have you, we have to understand, we have to be able to have a set of values. We have dependency that is running amok. How the change will make us more independent, we have to think about it. We have to think about how working very hard for ourselves, being resilient, being self-reliant, and all those things will kind of fall into place by those changes. We have to think about that. You were talking about James Monroe. It is not really by some of the faults that we have that we can create awe among our fellow human beings. It's got to be some important things we've done in spite of James Monroe. We talked about that. Yes, he has slaves. In fact, he inherited, as you know, inherited slaves from his parents, grandparents, and what have you. Okay. All right, and he kept on. And there is part of the literature to indicate that he treated a lot of his slaves not with complete contempt. As you
Oh,
come,
Prof.
I'm coming. And there are these pieces of the literature to indicate how he took care of their health, he took care of uh, their social wherewithal. Now we can say, let us not celebrate slavery. No, I am not celebrating slavery. I am saying that those that he had, he treated them comparatively well than those who were in other areas, kind of maiming their slaves, uh, uh, killing some of them, and what have you. Also, you heard that, and of course, you read that he came in around 1816. His grant of $100,000 at that time helped with the transportation and other things that sent people to this place, to a place called the Republic of Liberia.
It wasn't his money. It was Congress.
I'm saying during, no, of course, how would he have, when he himself died poor, how would he have been the one, how would he have been the one by, it was during his time that the $100,000 grant was kind of raised. So that's important part of what we are talking about, the Monroe story. If you know about the Monroe Doctrine,
Yes.
we put other people, like other Westerners, on notice that nobody was supposed to touch those people that America was kind of dear to, and what have you. So you have to be able, if you are looking at someone like Monroe, you have to be able to put those things in context. And the history that we create, the history that we study, and what have you, we have to be able to meticulously look at several aspects that may be of a humanitarian nature that will help us go as we want to go. So when you say that, oh, this man was, and you keep saying he was no, he wasn't. He was one of the few, one of the few who slavery or what have you. But as far as treating of them was concerned, his was in a different ballpark. And all these things we have to be able to look at to come up, to be able to look at, yes.
So my thing is that it's not where come first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Because value system, they develop over time. We cannot say, oh, if we change this flag, we have value. We look, even now, what happens when we stand up? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the Republic of Liberia and to the Republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So if we are talking about values and you say with liberty and justice for all, those words are value-laden words. That means that liberty and justice for all should be something that we live in our country. But those values are absent in our country. So if we say that, oh, we're going to wait until we have values, or values are lived. Are lived values. So I don't agree with that. And also,
Jackie, before you learn, Jackie, no one is.
Don't get the chance.
No, but the thing about it, when you're trying to twist a few things, then it's a problem. Liberty and justice cannot be the only values. What I'm saying is
I'm not saying they're the only values.
If we are looking at, I'm talking about, if we are looking at changes, we have to look at the whole 9 yards. So yes. I'm not the changes we are talking about. Do they have to exist before a nation exists? Of course not. All I'm saying is that we have to enlarge the package of the discussion. And by the way, I don't know where this person came up with the 47 members he's talking about.
Just a number.
That's a number, right? So the thing I'm saying is that we are not saying this must follow the other. I am saying, look, let's broaden the discussion. Every nation should be able to have a set of values.
Yes.
And it's not just 2 or 3. it has to be a little more, which are supposed to be practical. If you make them to be a kind of aspirational, okay, that's one thing. We can put some in the aspirational context, and we can put others in the practical context. But these have to be able to work together to demonstrate that we mean business and we are moving towards what is the greater good that will bring in growth and development in the country.
We have Larry Davis say, keep in mind the concept of a collective African identity is not African. The concept of being African emerged in the Black diasporas. The first truly African people are the Black diasporas. The Black diaspora became detribalized in the New World. That's not true. But I disagree. I disagree with that, Mr. Davis. I don't think so. I even within the Black community in the diaspora, there are segments that don't get along with each other. You know, I mean, people have talked about the fact that even Africans have gone to Europe or to the United States, and some of the worst racism or prejudice they've encountered is from African Americans, who call them all sorts of names. So I don't think that the concept of a collective African identity comes from the Black diaspora. But then again, I mean, that's how you feel, but I don't feel like that. I think that the peoples of Africa, they may have had segmented groups, but they occupied this continent. And that in itself was a collective identity of being African. You know, I think that the Black diaspora, they came together because of slavery or the oppression. But if that is the case, you would think that the African Americans or the Blacks in the diaspora, I'm not talking about the Africans who go to the diaspora, I'm talking about the Blacks who have been there for a while, and the African American would embrace.
What is this new, Jackie? What is this new world? What is this new world? What is this new world?
The new world. Okay.
What is it? I just want to know. Yeah, because if people left their original continent and went to other places and interacted and what have you, and you call that detribalizing, the Black diaspora is a movement, a phenomenon in the Black history that must be actually studied and understood. And without studying and understanding it, we cannot extrapolate whatever it is out there and want to discuss that in Africa, the genuine African setting. So we have to be able to dichotomize those things to be able to arrive at a potent conclusion that is going to help a kind of give all of us meaning, both those on the continent and those in the diaspora.
So, because if you look at an African identity, even negritude was a Black consciousness that was brought about by Black Africans. Not, you know, and then of course America had the Harlem Renaissance, but the Black Africans who were in France, they got negritude to have a collective Black identity, you know. So I don't, Mr. Davis, I mean, I don't agree with you. I'm sure there are others who might agree, but I don't. David Giles says the Liberian flag, the seal, and the name of Monrovia should be changed. Yeah, Dave, to reflect a national identity and cohesiveness. This will be the beginning of the building of a wholesome nation. We have to be a bit creative and develop our own system. Okay. And I wanted to say, I want to say hello to William Gay. He's watching from Bassa. Yeah. So hello, William.
Now let's come back before we get to that next. Talking about Black national identity and what did he say? National identity and something else. I'm talking about
collective. David. Larry Davis. Oh, Larry. Yeah, Larry Davis is. Yes, I know him.
It's David Jar.
You mean Larry Davis?
I'm not. I'm talking about. We left Larry Davis, who went to David Jar.
David Jar.
We talk about national identity and cohesiveness. What is this national identity and cohesiveness? To change a set of symbols and all that to another or move from that to another? Is that what is going to create national identity and cohesiveness? We've got to look at those two loaded phrases, which are identity and cohesiveness. What makes a group cohesive? If all in the group agree on all the changes. What brings about identity, national identity? If all if all parts in the group agree, can we ever get to that point? Especially if we are going to read the symbols along one line. Those that need a little tweak and what have you, we can talk about them. But to talk about, hey, complete change and what have you, we are also not going to come to this point of cohesiveness.
So Humphrey Jabate said we need changes, but it should be inclusive of every demographics. It should take into consideration our cultural values. Finally, those needed changes should be unifying in a way that no fraction of the population will feel isolated. Yes. Okay. Jimmy Eastman says you are right, Prof. We have to establish what our most important values are first. These values determine our identity. Secondly, what principles we espouse will govern us and interact and determine how we interact. It has to be a thorough and wholesome self-evaluation. It isn't about what we imagine ourselves to be. It is our identity. It's our values that we value. Is who we are. If we believe if that 25th petty theft is acceptable, and that's what you, I don't understand the ending of that.
The short of the long here.
Noah Brown, I take exception to that. And my name is not woman. My name is Jackie. Okay. And do not say let the man speak. His name is Professor Nagbe. So please try and be civil. This is a discussion. No problem. Let me speak, because the last time somebody said this and they thought I was interviewing you. For those of you who are new to this show, this is not an interview. This is a discussion. Every week, Prof and I, we are on this show discussing. So this is not an interview. My name is not woman, and his name is not man. Thank you very much.
Jackie, okay. The thing about it is, I like to always discuss these things because in some instances, there are people in our audience who take some of these. I'm not saying that this is not serious, but the approach I bring to the discussion here is that of really exercising a point of reflection on a number of things that have gone wrong or gone right in our country called Liberia. So
Nehemiah Wardlow says there is no way that you can polish the word slave. Nothing more than being a free man.
Okay, I agree. Oh, brother Wardlow, I agree with that. You know, as I said, we take some of these things so seriously to the point of even taking them out of context. And we ought not to. I know, again, this is me speaking. You know, other people can talk about it. I didn't say anything about slave being, I'm not celebrating slavery and all that kind of thing. All I'm saying is that in a cluster of wrongs, we should be able to find aspects, except you say it's wrong and totally wrong and all that kind of thing. Okay, you can have that. I don't have problem with that because it is you talking about whatever you want to talk about. But the short of the long, as far as what we have been talking about is concerned, Jackie, is that the nature of humanity sometimes has more flaws than strengths, more weaknesses than strengths. Yet sometimes there are certain things that come hell or high waters have come about and gone, and there isn't much we can do about it. Yet, if we want to make certain changes, we have to ask ourselves the question, the context of the changes we want to make, and what we hope to achieve by making all those changes. And that is where I'm coming from when we are discussing some of these things as we talk about. here is somebody saying, at least almost saying that I said slavery is a good thing. That's one of the things. Is I cannot, I cannot be bothered with that, because actually that's not what I said. That's not what I said. In the trail of history, there are going to be dark spots. They've always been dark spots. And what vim, what Clorox we bring to erasing those dark spots have to be put into the context that are important for us, that will take us from one level of progress to the other. Someone say what? Sorry.
So probably Henry Last says that you should not be defending Mr. Monroe at all. Our ancestors shouldn't have been in that state of slavery in the first place. He is no hero, in my view. He did nothing.
Okay. Well, what is said here, if that is defending Monroe, okay, well, that's what you are thinking. And I often preface such statements by saying that slavery is nothing to be applauded, because it limits and sometimes destroys individual freedoms and what have you. So that is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is within the deficiencies, within the flaws and what have you, what in there can we take on to the next level, which is to determine progress and development and progress for the nation. That's what I'm talking about, sir.
Mr. Davis says the Liberian settlers wrote the charter for the OAU, not the so-called indigenous Africans. What Liberian settlers wrote the charter for the OAU, where the indigenous Africans part of the hegemonic power at the time? If they were, they would have been there too. Jimmy Eastman says, secondly, we have to determine what principles we espouse that will in turn govern our country, our interactions. Okay. And then Larry Davis said the African Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, is an example of African unity. Oh, okay. That's good.
Oh my God.
Henry says, sorry, Prof. I don't think you should be okay. That I think we read that one already. And then John Mawolo said, what difference does it make? Does that change our mindset? Does wearing African clothing make you a more African than someone who does not? It is the ungratefulness to our founding fathers that got us where we are today. Did the people that were met here have an organized or even united anything? Did any of them have a flag? Do we appreciate what it took for people who were slaves and mostly uneducated to organize a country? Do you even appreciate what it took to even get it recognized? Well, Mr. Mabolo, I would say to you, do you even remember the sacrifices, the killings and things that went on? If we are going to bring unity to our country, it's all groups, not just one group that came and did. The indigenous people played their part, and so did the free slaves, and so did the recaptured slaves. So this one-sided historical narrative will not watch on this show.
In fact, what the brother said, you cannot talk about being ungrateful to founding fathers. Who were the founding fathers, and what is this gratitude you're talking about? And you have to keep in mind that each of the ethnic groups had a well-organized way of determining progress in their various cultural nations. So you cannot, what you said just now is more of speaking from a Western perspective. And that's
That's the problem.
That is
so Mr.
Unfortunate for you to.
Mr. David says Rwanda understand what unity means. I tend to disagree with you, because in Rwanda now, it's almost against the law for you to ask somebody, are you a Tutsi or a Hutu? And let me tell you something. If you don't confront that, it should not matter whether you are a Tutsi or Hutu. It shouldn't matter. But if people are afraid to say whether they are Tutsi or Hutu, and you think that's unity, all it's doing is festering underneath. And it's going to explode one day. You should say it doesn't matter whether you are Hutu or Tutsi. But now when you ask people, are you a Hutu or Tutsi, nobody wants to talk. They are scared. But when they go in their homes, they say, oh, I'm Hutu. That's not unity. That's very superficial.
And the thing about it is that is why it is important to pay attention to the various chapters in the nation's history.
Yeah.
What is happening in Rwanda, as the brother just spoke about, is something that came out of, you know very well, the Rwanda genocide and all that kind of a thing. There had to again, coming back to what Jackie talked about, which I agree with, which is the discussion and what have you. We have to be able to a kind of do the hard work of discussion, and it is from that people will understand. It is from that books will be written. It is from that films will be made. It is from that so many things will come out to re-educate and a kind of create the sustainability of moving the nation forward. What is that?
And I want to answer Mr. David, who says that the reason why Ghana is developing economically is because Ghana is engaging the black diaspora while Liberians are playing game. Ghana is moving ahead because Ghana has an educated population. Hundreds of young Ghanaians who were educated elsewhere are returning home. One country you cannot say is moving ahead just because it opened its doors to the black diaspora. Ghana was moving ahead before this year of return. The black diaspora is not the one that's moving Ghana ahead. Ghana is moving ahead by itself and by the rules it's put in place. And so we are not playing games. We are going along. I don't like for people to say things about Liberia like that, but the black diaspora, they are not the ones that's moving Ghana ahead. Because when you say that, Prof, when you say that, you are saying that Africans by themselves cannot do something without outsiders. And that's not true. Ghanaians are moving their country ahead by themselves.
The thing about
and we have invited Dr. Dunn. Dr. Dunn is a big fan of this show, and he's my mentor, and I talk to him all the time. Now, Prof, we're about to wrap up some of these things. Let's read Jimmy Eastman. Jimmy Eastman said, how we look at ourselves is one of our handicaps. The man who came back from America is an African. The man who was sold to America was an African. We are letting white racist agenda define us and determine who we are. We need to recognize how this affects our thinking. I agree with you. Steve Biko says it. The greatest weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So I agree with you. But we've talked and we've talked and we've talked and we've talked about national symbols. We kind of deviated a bit, but we came back to it. You know, Prof. So it's almost the show is an hour. We've got an hour, almost an hour, 30 minutes. So before we start wrapping up, we want to say a thank you to all of you. We want to say again, happy birthday to Focus on Liberia. 4 years and counting. I don't know if Eugenia is still here, but Eugenia is on the team. And we want to say to all of you, thank you, Focus on Liberia. Thank you very much. Next week, we are going to have, Prof, I think you know, I did tell you, King Sao Boso, the Liberia History Guild has asked that they come on the show to talk about King Sao Boso and Boswe, and we have graciously agreed. So Kau Famula will be here next week with her team to talk about King Sao Boso. So don't miss it. Friday at 6 o'clock on Focus on Liberia. You know, we may have 31 persons, we may have 5 persons, but this show is a lively discussion about history and literature of Liberia. So we invite you to join us. And for that person who said that I should let Professor Nangwe speak, this is a joint show. We get together, Prof and I, to discuss. This is not an interview. And we thank you for being here. So, Prof, I will leave last words with you.
I continue to say that it is very much important. Liberian history, I guess, is in its own category. I know all histories, national histories, are complex, but it is important for us to always open our minds and understand the complexity out of which Liberia became a nation state. We have so many parts, and each part will want to defend itself and what have you. But we always have to drain the understanding of the symbols in a way that brings us together than divide us. If we understand that, then we are willing to move forward. I know that it is always with its own pain, but if you cannot take any pain, then don't live at all. You've got to understand the pain and see which ones you can identify and hold on to as you move forward, as you make progress, and as you develop. Liberia is what we got, and we always need to hold it together. Don't get all too serious as to want to even take knives and cut yourself up and whatever. All this past discussion we are doing, it is more of, I don't call it entertainment, but it is what a mutual thing that should bring us all together to know what we are passionate about as far as Liberia is concerned. Always a big love for Liberia, all of us. I don't believe in slavery. I don't celebrate slavery. All I'm saying is that if someone has done so many things, you want to look at those ones that help what move a set of humanity to a different level. Jackie, always thank you. You always got the literature and what have you, and that helps us a whole lot. Thank you, all the audience, people in the audience. Yeah.
We need to go back to literature because I get all antsy when it comes to history.
No,
but I
why?
want to thank I want to thank you all, and thank you all for coming. We started off with literature. We did we last week we had Dr. Tipote.
Yeah.
We interviewed him about his book,
Yeah.
Please buy his book.
Yeah.
It's called Bite and Blow.
Yes.
Talk about Tipote. And he
Yes.
has a book of poetry, Pepper
Yes.
Birds Bound for Freedom. It's a celebration of his 80 years on earth. So please buy Dr. Tipote's book.
Yeah.
Read the book. It tells you a lot about the 1970s and the progressive movement.
Yeah.
So this is a plug for his book. Buy his book. And while we are on it, buy Patrice Joie book. Her book is called Under Ducal Skies. Please buy it as well so you can join the conversation when we have her on. And I do get antsy sometimes, but this is a nice discussion on a Friday. We are here 6 o'clock every Friday. Tell everybody about the show. We try not to get too political, and we say, as we always say, have a nice weekend. We say mask up, pray for Liberia, pray for the world. Tell your friends and family to mask up, and remember, whether you are from the diaspora, whether you are from the new world, whether you want the flag to be changed, whether you want the flag to remain, we are all Liberians. All of us are Liberians. So good night and God bless.
Yes.
Good night, bro.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home.